We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Every angle of the upcoming 2024 election is about to be examined right here on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access breaking news, podcasts, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Hot off the heels of a resounding victory in Iowa, President Trump takes the big show to New Hampshire. At the time of recording, he is by far the outright favorite to win the Republican primary, the Republican nomination. And we're here to talk about that particular topic with Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Hello, Mark. Good to be here.
We watched with bated breath as the numbers came in. We watched Trump's victory speech, which people on MSNBC and CNN did not get the privilege to watch because the gatekeepers held them from that particular treasure. But Trump, he knocked it out of the park, 51%. What did you make of the Iowa primary, Tim?
Well, I thought the first thing that struck me was that the Des Moines Register poll was so accurate for a caucus, which is hard to do. He predicted 52%, he got 51%. And look, this isn't a historic victory because people think, okay, well, he got 51%, he got a majority, big deal. Well, nobody really has won in a competitive multi-candidate primary by more than about 12 or 13 points. And he won by 30. Yeah. And he got more votes than the three other candidates combined. And that says a lot. Vivek Ramaswamy saw the handwriting on the wall and immediately pivoted to Trump. And, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis both tried to spin it into a good evening for them. But
could we just address that Nikki Haley spin for the moment? She came third and said in her victory speech, this is a two-person race. I agree with her.
Well,
I just don't think she's one of the two.
You can say anything you want. It doesn't have to be true, Mark. Come on. Let's break down that statement for a second.
Sure.
Okay. On the one hand, it's a ridiculous thing to say when she finished third in a four-person race. And she finished 2 points behind DeSantis. It's not like she finished, 1 or 2 votes. She finished 2 full percentage points behind. So it's kind of a ridiculous statement, typical politician. On the other hand, as you look forward to New Hampshire, DeSantis has been bringing up the rear. He's at about 5% in New Hampshire, whereas Nikki Haley's up into the 20s, perhaps even close to 30, and probably stands to get most of the Chris Christie votes in the New Hampshire primary coming up on Tuesday. So in that sense, coming out of New Hampshire, I actually do think it will be a two-person race because I don't see DeSantis surviving New Hampshire. And even if he barely does, he's not going to survive South Carolina and Nevada, both of which are strongholds for Trump.
I've heard rumor that chatter, let's say chatter rather than rumor, that DeSantis is actually trying to push for an upset in South Carolina rather than focusing on New Hampshire, where he figures Nikki Haley's got second slots set up.
He's got no chance in New Hampshire because he's ignored it, and he's actually
going for the South Carolina surprise.
Chris Christie had doubled up DeSantis's vote in New Hampshire before he dropped out. He had about 10%, and DeSantis had about 5%. But heading out of New Hampshire, I think it's pretty clear Nikki Haley will still be in the race.
Yeah.
DeSantis will putatively, I suppose, still be in the race. But I think what's going to happen is they're going to go to South Carolina, and Trump is going to romp in South Carolina, and being that is Nikki Haley's home state, that'll be an embarrassing loss for her, and that will effectively end the primary, the way that it's going now, before Super Tuesday.
I think you're probably right in that, Tim. Now, let's talk about Trump's 51% here, because And I found this fascinating. I've got a couple of ideas I'd like to bounce off you, if I may, based on this. So we had, within hours of Trump's win there, we had J.B. Pritzker, Illinois governor, and Joe Scarborough, the token alleged conservative.
Oh, yeah, right. Conservative, sure.
Does he still use that moniker? I don't know.
No, I
But
don't think
we had
so.
both of them saying that, you know, almost half the people didn't vote for Donald Trump. That means that he has no chance. The country is against him. Now, I guess my first thought on that was, well, Governor Pritzker, you are an official surrogate for Joe Biden, who is polling at 33% in terms of
According to the
approval.
latest ABC News poll,
ABC
yes,
Ipsos News poll, correct.
33%, rock bottom.
So what does that tell us? If Pritzker is applying apples to this scenario that less than 50, roughly 50% of people didn't approve Donald Trump in a multi-candidate field in a competitive race, what does that tell us about comparing the same apples with Joe Biden, 33%?
Well, I think Kellyanne Conway put it best on Fox News on Monday night as Trump was scoring his landslide victory in Iowa. And she turned to the issue of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and she said, it looks like the Democrats are prepared to just let Joe Biden and Kamala Harris bleed out and focus on 2028. Now, look, I'm far from saying that Trump is a shoo-in. He's ahead in the national polls. More significantly, he's ahead in basically every battleground state, although some of those are close too. But if the election were held today, no question Donald Trump would win the election absent any kind of external factor, shall we say, like shenanigans with voting laws and mail-in ballots and all the rest that created such controversy in 2020.
Okay, and yeah, I see. The second thing I'm thinking is, if 50% or 51% isn't a victory for Donald Trump, then it can't be a victory for any of the other people who
No, it certainly
did
wasn't.
that as well. So Obama didn't get a victory. Yeah,
I think, look, I think
Clinton
this
didn't get a
is
victory.
this is really a matter of the interpretation of this Republican primary. And all
Sure.
along, we've all made something of a mistake in viewing it as an open primary.
Yes.
In fact, it never really was. It's pretty much an incumbent protecting his incumbency, even though he's not the incumbent. He was a former president. Republicans were very pleased with his policy, if not his personality, which probably cost him the 2020 election. But it's effectively been an incumbent protecting his position. And the unfortunate thing for Ron DeSantis in particular, not so much Nikki Haley, is that he didn't see that. He couldn't surmise that this was not his time. And you can understand why he would think it was, because he had scored a historic landslide victory by 20 points, reelected governor of Florida. So you could see where he would think this was his time. And Trump had been brought low and was weak last November, or shall we say like about 14 months ago, and then it all changed with the indictments.
Yeah.
So it's been an incumbent race pretty much all along.
Yeah, I guess Ron DeSantis, and I don't think he'd do this because it doesn't appear to me to be the kind of person he is. But it would seem to me that he would have been better off running a Gavin Newsom style shadow campaign, just in case Trump couldn't make it to the big show.
Well, the big question about DeSantis is 2028 and whether he has damaged his electoral prospects. And we won't know that till we get closer to 2028. And a lot of it will depend on whether Trump's in the White House or Biden or some other Democrat or other Republican.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of the swing states, which we mentioned earlier, we'll be right back with Tim Donner talking swing state statistics. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.